Excuse me, do you mind if I put my bag up in the overhead compartment? I think there's just enough room if we shift things around a little bit. I always seem to end up with a bag that's slightly too big for under the seat. Sorry to bother you right at the start of the flight. I'm hoping we can get settled before the cabin crew dims the lights completely.
Sure, go right ahead. Here, let me help you with that. It looks pretty heavy. There you go. It fits perfectly. No need to apologize at all. That's what the overhead bins are for, right? I'm Marcus, by the way. It felt a little strange not saying hello, considering we've got about 10 hours ahead of us sitting right next to each other. Might as well be friendly about it.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really kind. And yes, 10 hours is definitely long enough to at least know each other's names. I'm Priya. I have to admit, I always overpack. That word means bringing way more things than you actually need. Every single trip I tell myself I'll pack lighter, and every single time I end up with a bag stuffed full of things I never even use. It's become a bit of a bad habit, honestly.
Ha, nice to meet you, Priya. I completely understand. I almost overpacked myself for this trip, but I forced myself to stick to one carry-on. So I have to ask, have you flown this route before? New York to London, I mean. This is actually my very first time flying across the Atlantic, and I'll be honest, I was a little surprised by just how long this flight actually is. 9-10 hours in the air feels like a whole different category of flying to me.
Oh, really? Your first transatlantic flight. That's exciting. Yes, I do this route quite a few times a year, actually, so I've become what people call a frequent flyer, someone who travels by plane very regularly. I've developed a little routine for surviving long-haul flights. The most important thing, honestly, is to stay hydrated. That means drinking plenty of water throughout the flight, not just waiting until you feel thirsty. The air in the cabin gets very dry, and dehydration makes jet lag so much worse when you land.
That's a really good tip. I actually had no idea the cabin air was that dry. I should have brought a bigger water bottle. So you said you do this route a few times a year. That's impressive. Are you heading home to London, or are you off somewhere else after this? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what brings you on this flight? I'm always curious about where people are actually going and why. There are so many different stories on any given plane, aren't there?
Heading home, yes. I'm based in London. I was visiting family in New York for about 2 weeks. My cousins live out there, and I try to get out to see them at least once or twice a year. It was a wonderful trip, but I'm definitely ready to be back in my own bed. And what about you, Marcus? Is this business or pleasure? That's the classic question people ask on flights, isn't it? Though sometimes the honest answer is a little bit of both.
Exactly. A bit of both for me, hopefully. I'm heading to London for a tech conference. My company sent me over to represent us and learn about the latest AI tools being developed in the industry. But I've always wanted to visit the UK, so I decided to tack on a few extra days for sightseeing at the end. That phrase, tack on, means to add something extra to an existing plan. So the conference is the main reason, but I'm extending the trip to make the most of being there. I've always wanted to see Big Ben and the Tower of London in person.
Oh, you're going to absolutely love London. It really is a brilliant city. There's just so much to explore. So have you got a detailed itinerary all planned out, or are you going to wing it? That's a great English expression. To wing it means to improvise and figure things out as you go, without much preparation in advance. Some people are very rigid planners, and others just prefer to wander and see what happens. I always think the best travel experiences come from a mixture of both, honestly.
Honestly, I'm mostly going to wing it for the sightseeing part. I've got the conference schedule locked in, obviously, but after that, I'm just planning to explore. I work better that way. Too much structure stresses me out. But actually, since you live there, I would love to get some real local recommendations. You'd know the city so much better than any tourist guidebook ever could. Is there anything you'd say is absolutely essential to see or do? Maybe something that most tourists miss entirely.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I love giving recommendations. First thing, avoid the tourist traps. That phrase means places that are heavily marketed toward visitors but are usually overpriced and not very good. Leicester Square is a classic example. It looks exciting, but honestly, it's just crowds and expensive restaurants. Instead, go to Borough Market near London Bridge. It's an incredible food market with stalls from all over the world, amazing atmosphere, brilliant food, and very much where actual Londoners go. That alone is worth a morning of your time.
Borough Market. Okay, I'm writing that down right now. That sounds fantastic. I love food markets. There's something about them that just feels more authentic than a regular restaurant, you know? Is there anything outside of London itself you'd recommend? I have maybe 3 or 4 free days after the conference, and I'd love to see a bit more of England while I'm there. I know almost nothing about what's outside the city, which I'm a little embarrassed to admit. I've been doing most of my research on YouTube, which probably isn't the most reliable source.
Don't be embarrassed at all. Honestly, YouTube is quite good for travel inspiration. If you only do one-day trip, that means a trip somewhere outside the city and back in a single day, I would say go to Bath. It's only about an hour and a half from London Paddington Station by direct train, and it's one of the most beautiful cities in all of England. It has these incredible Roman baths that are thousands of years old, stunning Georgian architecture, and a really lovely, relaxed atmosphere. You could easily fill a whole day there without rushing at all.
Roman baths. That sounds incredible. I had no idea something like that was accessible as a day trip from London. I genuinely thought I'd have to stay overnight somewhere to see things like that. So you mentioned your family is in Mumbai originally, but you grew up in London. That's such an interesting combination of backgrounds. I've lived in Austin, Texas my whole life, so I don't really have that multicultural perspective yet. What's it like growing up between two such different cultures? I imagine it gives you a really unique way of seeing the world.
That's a really thoughtful question. Yes, my parents are originally from Mumbai in India, but I was born and raised in London. It's given me this really interesting dual identity, I think. Growing up, we spoke Gujarati at home and celebrated both Diwali and Christmas, which as a kid felt completely normal, but looking back is actually quite special. And then having cousins in New York means I feel comfortable in a third city too. Each place feels like home in different ways, even though they really couldn't be more different from each other in terms of pace and culture.
That's genuinely beautiful, having multiple places that feel like home. I think a lot of people only ever know one city and one culture deeply, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the perspective you must have sounds invaluable. If you don't mind me asking, and that phrase is just a polite way to introduce a personal question, what do you actually do for work? You travel quite a bit, it sounds like. So I'm curious whether that's related to your job or just a personal passion. Either way, I'm a little envious of how comfortable you seem on these long flights.
Ha, the comfort definitely took years of practice, I promise. As for work, I'm in marketing. Specifically, I manage digital campaigns for a fashion brand based in London. On the surface, it sounds quite glamorous, fashion. But the reality is that most of my day involves spreadsheets, analytics dashboards, and what feels like an endless stream of Zoom calls. The creative side is fun, but the data analysis side takes up a lot more time than people probably imagine when they hear the word fashion. It's very much a numbers-driven industry these days.
Ha, I love that. The gap between how glamorous a job sounds and what it actually involves day to day. I completely relate to that. I'm a software engineer, which to some people sounds like I spend all day doing incredibly complex and exciting things, but mostly I'm fixing bugs and sitting in meetings. The conference I'm heading to is focused on artificial intelligence tools. AI is genuinely changing what's possible in software development right now, and it's both exciting and a little overwhelming to keep up with. Is AI something that's affecting your work in marketing as well?
Tell me about it. That phrase means I completely relate to what you're saying. AI has completely transformed how we do digital marketing, honestly. We use it for ad targeting now, which means using algorithms to figure out exactly who should see which advertisements at which time. It's incredibly effective, but it also means the skill set needed for my job has shifted enormously in just the past 2 or 3 years. I sometimes feel like I'm sprinting just to keep up. Is that how it feels in software engineering too? Like the ground is constantly shifting under your feet?
Absolutely. Constantly shifting is the perfect description. It can feel exhausting sometimes. Just when you feel like you've mastered something, there's a new tool or framework or approach that makes everything you knew feel slightly outdated. But I think that's honestly part of why conferences like the one I'm going to are so valuable. You get to be in a room with hundreds of other people who are dealing with the exact same uncertainty, and somehow that makes it feel more manageable. There's something reassuring about realizing that nobody really has it completely figured out yet.
That's such a healthy way to look at it, and I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of value in shared uncertainty, knowing that everyone in your field is figuring things out together rather than one group having all the answers. It takes the pressure off a bit, doesn't it? So, shifting topics slightly, what do you think of flying so far? I know you mentioned this was your first long haul, which again means a long distance flight. How are you actually feeling? Be honest. You don't have to pretend it's been perfectly comfortable if it hasn't.
Okay, honestly, the takeoff was a little nerve-wracking for me. I gripped the armrest a bit harder than I'd like to admit. I'm fine now that we're up at cruising altitude. It feels much smoother, and I've relaxed quite a bit. But I'll be honest, I'm not looking forward to any turbulence. Even mild bumps make me a little anxious, which I know is irrational because flying is statistically very safe. Does turbulence bother you at all, or have you completely gotten over that after so many flights?
It used to bother me quite a lot, actually, so I completely understand the feeling. The thing that helped me the most was learning to take my cue from the flight attendants. That phrase means to use someone else's reaction as a guide for your own. Flight attendants walk through turbulence carrying hot drinks without even flinching, and that tells you everything you need to know. If they're not worried, the situation is genuinely fine. Also, I started thinking of turbulence as the plain equivalent of bumps on a road. Completely normal, completely manageable.
Taking your cue from the flight attendants, I really like that idea. It's such a practical anchor. Instead of relying on your own anxiety, you just observe the people who actually know what's normal and mirror their calm. I'm going to try to remember that if things get bumpy later on. So what's your strategy for actually getting through a 10-hour flight? Like, what do you actually do with all that time? I have a rough plan, but I'm curious whether someone experienced like you has a more refined approach to passing the hours.
I've got a fairly reliable system at this point. I usually start with 1 or 2 films. I find it's easiest to do screen time when I still have energy and the cabin is lively. Then I try to sleep for at least 3 or 4 hours somewhere in the middle. Landing well rested really does make an enormous difference to jet lag. That's the exhaustion and disorientation you feel after crossing multiple time zones. If you arrive having slept even a little bit, you can usually push through and adjust much faster than if you land completely exhausted. Do you have a plan for the flight?
I do have a rough plan, yes. I downloaded a few episodes of a show I've been meaning to watch. One of those prestige dramas everyone keeps recommending that I've never had time to start. And I also brought a book. Though I have to be completely honest with you, I almost never actually read on planes. I always bring a book with the best of intentions, but then I get distracted or I just end up watching something instead. The book usually sits in my bag the entire flight, and I take it out again at home having read exactly 0 pages.
Oh my goodness, that is me completely. Every single time I go to an airport, I buy a new book at the bookshop, without fail. And it becomes this little ritual. The airport bookshop visit feels like an essential part of the travel experience, but the book itself never gets opened on the plane. It just travels in my bag as a very expensive bookmark, essentially. I think I have about 6 unread airport books sitting on my shelf at home right now. There's a small part of me that genuinely believes each new flight will be different, but it never is.
Ha! 6 unread airport books. That is genuinely impressive dedication to optimism. I love that you call it a ritual, though. There really is something about the airport bookshop that feels different from any other bookshop, isn't there? Something about being about to travel makes you genuinely believe you're going to become a very dedicated reader for the next 10 hours. Maybe we should make a pact right now. Both of us open our books at some point before we land, even if it's just 1 page. Deal?
Ha! Deal. Though I'm giving us both about a 15% chance of actually following through on that. This has been such a nice conversation. I think one of the underrated things about long flights is that they sometimes force you to actually talk to people, which we almost never do in normal life anymore. Everyone has their headphones in and their screens out before the plane even leaves the gate. It's actually quite refreshing to just chat with someone you've never met before. Does it feel comfortable to you? Talking to strangers?
Honestly, I'm naturally a little introverted in new situations, but once I get comfortable, I'm quite happy chatting. I think the key is that flights create this kind of shared experience. You're both stuck in the same space with the same constraints, and there's nothing to prove and nowhere to be. It removes all the social pressure that makes small talk awkward in other settings. Also, I have to say, You've been really easy to talk to. I think I got lucky with my seatmate today. A lot of people would have just put headphones in immediately, and that would have been the end of it.
That's a really lovely thing to say. Thank you. I do think flights are quite unique social spaces for exactly the reason you described. There's a kind of equality to economy class, especially. Everyone's in the same slightly uncomfortable seats, eating the same food, dealing with the same recycled air. It levels the playing field in a funny way. Can I ask, do you travel much for work generally, or is this conference a bit of a rare occasion? I'm curious whether the nervousness around flying is something you're going to have to get used to regularly.
This is actually a fairly rare trip for me. I work mostly remotely. Software engineering is one of those jobs that's fully possible from a home office, so I don't travel for work very often. My company usually does one or two big in-person events a year, and this London conference is the big one this year. Most of my colleagues are flying in from different parts of the US, so I'll at least know some familiar faces when I get there, which is reassuring. I think after this trip, though, I might be more open to booking flights more regularly for personal travel. You've made it sound very manageable.
You're going to catch the travel bug. I can already see it. That's what we call it when traveling becomes something you genuinely crave and actively plan for. Once you've had that experience of arriving somewhere completely new and navigating an unfamiliar city and just absorbing a different culture, it becomes almost addictive. And honestly, London is a brilliant first European city. It has the advantage of being English-speaking, so nothing feels completely foreign, but culturally, it's quite different from any American city. It'll stretch you in exactly the right amount.
The travel bug. I like that expression a lot. And you're right, starting with London feels like a very sensible first step into international travel. Same language, but a genuinely different cultural experience. I've been reading that even small things like the etiquette around queuing or lining up, as we say in America, is taken much more seriously in the UK than in the US. Is that true from your experience? Are there any other cultural differences I should know about to avoid accidentally being rude without realizing it?
Oh, the queue thing is absolutely true. Do not jump a queue in London under any circumstances. People will not say anything, but they will absolutely judge you, quite silently and quite thoroughly. A few other things. Say thank you to bus drivers when you get off. It's completely standard, and drivers genuinely notice if you don't. And don't be surprised if people apologize to you when you've accidentally bumped into them. British people apologize reflexively for almost everything, including things that aren't their fault at all. It can seem odd at first, but it's just politeness.
Apologizing when someone bumps into you. That's fascinating. In Austin, I think we'd probably just both look confused and move on. I love learning these kinds of microcultural details because they're never in guidebooks. Guidebooks tell you what to see, but they don't tell you how to actually behave like a considerate visitor. The bus driver thing is a great tip. I would never have thought of that. Is there anything about British food I should know? I've heard mixed things. Some people say it's underrated, and some people say the stereotypes are still very much accurate.
British food gets a bad reputation that is honestly not fully deserved, at least not anymore. The food scene in London specifically is genuinely world class. But if you want the very British experience, you should have a proper full English breakfast at least once. That's eggs, bacon, beans, toast, grilled tomato, maybe black pudding. It's quite heavy, but it's wonderful on a cold morning. And a proper afternoon tea if you get the chance, not the tourist version, but a nice local cafe version. And obviously fish and chips by the river. That one's a cliche for a reason.
Fish and chips by the river. That image alone is making this trip feel very real. I think up until now, it's been kind of abstract, just conference schedules and hotel bookings. But talking to you has made London feel like an actual place with texture and character. Can I ask you something about your trips to New York? I'm curious what it looks like from the other direction. As someone from London, what do you find most surprising or different about New York every time you go? What stands out to you?
That's a great question. The energy is the main thing. New York has this relentless, buzzing energy that London doesn't quite match. London has energy, but it's more layered and sometimes quieter. New York feels like everything is happening at maximum volume all the time, which is exhilarating for about 3 days and then slightly exhausting. I also find the portion sizes genuinely staggering every time. I think I've come back from every New York trip having eaten far too much because everything is just enormous compared to what I'm used to. The friendliness of strangers also catches me off guard. Americans will just start talking to you, which I love.
The portion sizes are genuinely difficult to explain until you've experienced them. Even as an American, I sometimes find Texas portion sizes a bit excessive. And yes, Americans do talk to strangers quite readily. I think in the UK that's sometimes read as a little unusual, right? Like in London, if a stranger starts enthusiastically chatting to you on the tube, you might assume something is slightly off. But on planes, it seems completely natural everywhere, which is interesting. Maybe the shared experience of being airborne together lowers everyone's guard a bit.
You're absolutely right about the tube. Eye contact on the London Underground is practically treated as a minor social offense. Everyone stares straight ahead or at their phone. It's funny because the same person who would never speak on the tube will happily have a 40-minute conversation on a flight. I think altitude genuinely does something to social norms. How are you feeling now, by the way? We're probably a couple of hours into the flight at this point. Are you more comfortable than when we took off? You mentioned the takeoff was a bit nerve-wracking for you.
Much more comfortable, honestly. Thank you for asking. I think the conversation has actually been the best possible distraction. I haven't thought about turbulence for the past hour at all, which is saying something. I was fully prepared to sit here gripping the armrest and watching the flight tracker obsessively. But instead, I've learned about Borough Market, Bath, British queuing etiquette, and the emotional complexity of airport bookshop purchases. I'd call that a successful first hour of long-haul flying. Do you think we'll get any turbulence on this route?
There's usually some mild turbulence over the North Atlantic, just light bumps, nothing dramatic. But transatlantic routes are extremely well traveled and pilots know exactly what to expect along the way. If it gets rough, the captain will usually put on the seatbelt sign and just ask everyone to sit down, and that's really the whole story. The pilots have seen it thousands of times. Remember, take your cue from the crew. Now, have you sorted out where you're actually staying in London? I want to make sure your hotel is well located for all the sightseeing we've planned for you.
I'm staying in a hotel near King's Cross, which I was told is quite central. My company booked it, and honestly, I didn't do much research. I just trusted that central London was central London. Is King's Cross a good area to be in? I know it's where the train station is, obviously, so I assume the transport links are good. But I have no sense of whether it's a nice neighborhood to walk around in, or whether there are good restaurants nearby. I'm realizing now how little I actually researched the specifics of where I'd be staying.
King's Cross is actually a great choice. You got lucky. It's been completely regenerated over the past 10 or 15 years, and now it's a really vibrant area. Granary Square nearby is beautiful. There are lots of lovely restaurants and bars along the canal. From King's Cross, you can get virtually anywhere on the tube very quickly, which makes it ideal for sightseeing. You're also very close to Islington, which is a really lovely residential neighborhood with brilliant independent restaurants and markets. Honestly, your company made a good call on that one.
That's a relief to hear. I'll admit I was slightly worried I was going to end up somewhere inconvenient and spend half the trip on the wrong bus. You've given me so much useful information tonight. I genuinely feel much more prepared than I did when I boarded. It's funny how much more useful a real local recommendation is than anything you could find through a search engine. Are you tired? I realize I've been asking you questions for over an hour, and you mentioned wanting to get some sleep on this flight. I don't want to keep you up if you're ready to wind down.
I am getting a little sleepy, I'll admit, but genuinely this has been one of the nicest flight conversations I've had in years. Usually I just watch something and nod off, so this has been a lovely change. I might try to sleep for a few hours soon and then have a film when I wake up. That's my ideal long-haul structure. Before I do, though, it was really genuinely nice chatting with you, Marcus. I mean that. You've got great energy. And I think London is going to respond well to you. I hope the conference is brilliant and the sightseeing is even better.
That means a lot, Priya, truly. This has been exactly the kind of conversation that makes a long flight feel much shorter, and I think you deserve a lot of credit for that. Thank you also for all the recommendations: Borough Market, Bath, the full English breakfast, King's Cross area tips. I'm going to make the most of every single one. And thanks for the flying tips, the hydration advice, the cue from the crew trick. I genuinely feel less anxious about the remaining 8 hours than I did when we took off. You've been a really wonderful seatmate.
You're very welcome. It was my absolute pleasure. And listen, if you want more recommendations once you're actually there and walking around, feel free to drop me a message. That phrase just means send me a quick informal note. I'm happy to point you toward anything specific you're trying to find, whether it's a neighborhood, a restaurant, or even just a good coffee shop near your conference venue. London can feel overwhelming at first, but it's a very navigable city once you get a feel for the layout. You'll find your feet quickly. I'm sure of it.
I'd really love that. Thank you. Though I have to admit, I'm never quite sure of the etiquette in these situations. That word means the accepted rules of polite social behavior. Like, is it normal to exchange contact details with someone you met on a plane? I don't want to come across as strange or pushy. Do people actually follow through on these kinds of connections, or is it more of a polite thing to say in the moment?
I completely understand the uncertainty, and I think your instinct to be thoughtful about it is actually quite sweet. Honestly, the easiest thing is LinkedIn. That way it's professional and not at all awkward. It's literally designed for connecting with people you've met through any kind of context. You can just search for Priya Sharma, Marketing, London. There shouldn't be too many of those. That way, if you genuinely want a recommendation while you're there, you can message me. And if not, no pressure at all. It's a very low-stakes way to stay connected.
LinkedIn. That's actually the perfect solution. I would not have thought of that, but it makes complete sense. It's professional enough to not feel weird and casual enough to just be a friendly connection. Priya Sharma, Marketing, London. I will absolutely search for you and send a connection request when I land and have Wi-Fi, and I'll genuinely use it if I need a recommendation. I'm not just saying that. You've already proven your local knowledge is far superior to anything on the internet.
Ha! Far superior to the internet. That's a very high compliment. I'll take it. Right. I really should try to get some sleep now, or I'll land in London completely exhausted and spend the whole day being grumpy, which is never a good look. I'm going to put my eye mask on and see if I can get a few hours. Don't be alarmed if I accidentally lean slightly in your direction. I'm told I sometimes list to the left when I sleep on planes, which I can only apologize for in advance.
Ha! I appreciate the warning. I'll do my best to be a stable wall on this side. Enjoy your sleep, Priya. Seriously. Thank you again for everything. The travel tips, the flying advice, the cultural etiquette lessons, and just being genuinely lovely company for the first part of this flight. I'm going to put my headphones in and start that show I've been meaning to watch. And maybe, just maybe, I'll open the book for a few pages as well. 15% chance, as you said, but I'm feeling optimistic tonight.
15% and rising. I believe in you. Enjoy the show, enjoy London when you get there, and enjoy your very first proper British experience. I genuinely think you're going to have an incredible trip. People who go in with curiosity and openness always do. Sweet dreams might be premature since you're not sleeping, so instead, enjoy your program. That's the British word for TV show, by the way. One last free vocabulary lesson before I go. Sleep well, Marcus. It was a real pleasure.
Program. I love that. Already learning British English before I've even landed. Sleep well, Priya. I hope your cousins in New York know how lucky they are to have someone as warm and thoughtful as you visiting them. And I hope London feels as good to come back to as it always should after 2 weeks away. This was exactly the kind of flight I didn't know I needed. Safe travels. Or I suppose, since we're on the same plane, safe arrival to us both.
Safe arrival to us both? Perfectly put. You know, I've had plenty of long flights where I've barely spoken a word to the person next to me. And this was such a refreshing reminder of why keeping your headphones out for a while at the start of a flight is worth it. Right, eye mask on, neck pillow adjusted, and I am officially going to sleep. Thank you for a genuinely lovely conversation, Marcus. London is going to love you. Good night, or good flight, rather.